God, the phone rang and I just knew. You know that feeling? When a name flashes on the screen and your stomach just plummets into your shoes. It was him. Alaric, my dad. I let it ring a few more times, just for good measure, before picking up. His voice was exactly what I expected. Thin, a little shaky, the whole poor me routine. "Evie, sweetheart," he started, and I could already feel my teeth grinding. "I was wondering, I know you're busy, but could you possibly help me? My doctor said I need to see a specialist, a cardiologist, and the wait list is so long and I just don't." I let him trail off. I let the silence hang there for a beat, just to make it uncomfortable. Then the words, my old reliable armor, just came out. They always do. "Honestly, Dad," I said, my voice dripping with a sweetness that I knew he'd recognize as poison. "If you had let me go to art school all those years ago, maybe I'd be the kind of daughter who'd be thrilled to help. But you didn't want an artist, remember? You wanted a doctor daughter. Well, your doctor daughter quit, so you're going to have to figure this one out on your own." Click, I ended the call. And in the quiet of my apartment, this awful, ugly little smile spread across my face. It felt good, like I'd just scored the winning point in a game only I was playing. Another round won in our decade-long war. It was sick, I know, but at that moment, it felt like victory. Look, it's not like I don't know what he did for me. I mean, I have memories, right? He was my whole world. Him working 2 jobs after Mom left, coming home smelling like sawdust and industrial soap. The guy was a single dad before it was, a trendy hashtag. He never, ever missed a parent-teacher conference, never missed a shitty school play. He'd be there in the back row, still in his steel-toed work boots, looking more exhausted than any human should, but he'd be smiling like I was Meryl Streep. Everything was, for you, Evie. The extra shifts that made his back ache, the rust bucket car he drove for 15 years because a new transmission meant I couldn't get a new computer. His entire life was a giant, heavy monument built in my name. And that was the goddamn problem, you get it, right? That monument came with a non-negotiable blueprint. He wasn't just building a life for me, he was building my life. And in his version of the plans, there was only one career path, Dr. Yvette, Dr. Alaric's daughter. It was his trophy, the ultimate validation that all his sacrifice, all his pain had paid off. My little doodles and sketches? A cute hobby, sweetheart. I remember so clearly the night before my scholarship interview for the city's best art program. I had my portfolio spread out on the living room floor, and I was vibrating with excitement. He came and sat down next to me, picked up my best charcoal portrait, and he just looked at it with this pained, disappointed expression. "There's no future in this, Evie," he said, his voice so gentle it was brutal. "You're too smart to throw your life away on pictures. A doctor helps people. A doctor is respected." He didn't have to forbid me from going. He just made it clear that if I chose art, I was choosing to invalidate his entire existence. So I caved. I went to med school. And it was 4 years of chemical formulas and memorizing bones, followed by a residency that literally sucked the soul out of my body. The smell of antiseptic, the constant beeping of machines, the feeling of being a walking, talking algorithm of symptoms and prescriptions. It was a nightmare. I was good at it, technically, but I was miserable. I felt like an actress playing a role I never auditioned for, and the applause just felt like noise. The day I quit, I walked out of the hospital during my lunch break, took off my white coat, and dumped it in a public trash can. It was the most liberating and terrifying moment of my life. And ever since then, that's been my weapon. It's the one thing I have that he can't control. So yeah, I use it. Like last year, when he called in a panic because his blood pressure medication had run out. A 5-minute phone call, that's all it would have taken for me to get him a bridge prescription. But I didn't. "Oh, wow, that sounds stressful, Dad," I said, my voice flat, as I scrolled through Instagram. "You know, a good doctor would have planned ahead for their refills." I let him sweat it out for 3 days, told myself it was about teaching him to be self-sufficient, about boundaries. It wasn't. It was about punishment. Or the time he got some lab results back. He brought them over to my apartment, his hands actually trembling a little as he held out the papers. We were in my kitchen, and the fluorescent light made him look so old and gray. "What does this mean, Evie? Is it bad?" He looked at me with this desperate hope, searching for the doctor he'd invested everything in. And I just pushed the papers back across the table without even looking at them properly. "I told you, Dad. I'm not a doctor anymore. You need to make an appointment and ask someone who is. The light just went out of his eyes, and some sick, twisted part of me felt that jolt of victory again. Every time he asked for medical help, it wasn't about his health. It was him trying to pull me back into the box he'd built for me. And every time I said no, I was kicking another hole in the side of it. It was a war for my own soul, and I was determined to win, no matter the cost. Then things got quiet. The calls asking for favors stopped. For a couple of weeks, he just didn't call at all, which, honestly, was more unsettling than the constant, low-grade conflict. The silence felt loud. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, his name popped up on my screen again. I took a deep breath, my whole body tensing up, ready to deploy the usual defenses. I was already running scripts in my head. No, I can't look at that rash. No, I don't know why your prescription costs so much. But his voice was different. There was no hesitant, pleading tone. He wasn't asking for anything. "Hey, Evie," he said, and he sounded just like a normal dad. Not the man whose dreams I'd crushed, not the warden of my former prison. Just Dad. I was just calling to see, well, I saw a flyer for this little art exhibit down at the community center. It's this Saturday. Local artists, nothing fancy. Watercolors and things. It made me think of you, from when you were a kid. I was wondering if you'd want to go with me. I was completely, utterly thrown. An art exhibit. It was so far off script it felt like a trap. It was like he was speaking a language I'd forgotten we shared. My mind immediately started racing, searching for the hidden meaning, the ulterior motive. What's his angle here? Is he trying to trick me into a conversation about my wasted talent? Is this some new, passive-aggressive way to make me feel guilty? It had to be a tactic. A new front in the war. He was trying to use my old passion against me, to find a crack in my armor, to soften me up so he could ask for something bigger later. "Dad, I haven't done any of that stuff in years, you know that," I said, and I hated how my voice instantly became cold and sharp, like a shard of glass. I was proud of how quickly I'd rebuilt my walls. It's not really my thing anymore. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. It was a lie, of course. I still had sketchbooks hidden in the back of my closet, filled with half-finished charcoal portraits and landscapes I was too ashamed to look at. "Besides," I added, twisting the knife just a little, because that's what I did. I made sure the wound was deep. "I'm busy on Saturday. I have plans." Another lie. My only plan was to binge-watch a new crime series and order a disgustingly large pizza for one. There was this long, hollow silence on the other end of the line. It stretched on for what felt like a full minute. I could hear the faint, cheerful sound of a game show on the TV in his living room. He was probably sitting in that worn-out recliner of his. For a second, I almost took it back. But the stubborn, wounded part of me, the part that had been fighting this war for a decade, held firm. Finally, he just said, "Oh, okay, I understand." His voice was flat. All the light, all the tentative hope that had been there a minute ago was just gone. "All right then. Talk to you later." He hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, phone in my hand, feeling that familiar, ugly rush of having won. I'd seen through his little trick. I'd successfully defended my territory. He tried a new angle, and I shut it down. My fortress, I thought with a grim sense of satisfaction, was completely, utterly impenetrable. The call came on Sunday morning. Not from him. It was my Aunt Carol, and her voice was a frantic, ragged mess that sliced right through my morning coffee haze. "Yvette, it's your father. He collapsed. They think it's a heart attack. He's at St. Mary's. They're working on him now." The world just tilted on its axis. The ceramic mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the kitchen floor, the sound barely registering over the roaring in my ears. He just called me," I stammered, my mind struggling to connect the dots. Carol's grief momentarily morphed into pure, undiluted fury. "Did he tell you he wasn't feeling well?" "He called me yesterday, said he'd been having chest pains for a week, but didn't want to bother anyone. He said he asked you to help him get a cardiologist appointment, but you refused. Yvette, for God's sake, what is wrong with you? He could be dying. What were you thinking?" I don't remember the drive to the hospital. It's just a blur of red lights, the screech of tires, and the sound of my own ragged breathing. My mind was a chaotic storm of denial and frantic justification, a desperate attempt to outrun the guilt that was chasing me down. It's not my fault. He's a grown man, he can make his own appointments. He was just trying to manipulate me again, using his health to pull me back in. He's probably fine, just a panic attack. This is all just a ploy for attention. The excuses felt thin and pathetic, unraveling in real time even as my brain spat them out. I found him in the CCU. The smell, that sterile, terrifying smell of disinfectant and fear, hit me first. He was out of immediate danger, the doctor said, a phrase that felt both like a miracle and a curse. But he looked diminished. So small and pale against the stark white sheets, a fragile island in a sea of tubes and wires, all hooked up to a symphony of relentless, beeping machines. The sight of him, so utterly vulnerable, shattered the last of my pathetic, self-serving defenses. All the anger, all the righteous indignation I'd been nursing for a decade, just evaporated, leaving behind a cold, nauseating dread that felt like it was going to swallow me whole. I walked over to his bed, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. My throat was tight, my eyes burning. "Dad," I whispered, my voice cracking on his name. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was serious. I thought you were just, I'm so sorry." The words felt stupid and useless, like trying to patch a gaping wound with a tiny Band-Aid. I started to ramble, a waterfall of pathetic explanations pouring out of me, trying to justify the years of petty cruelty in one desperate, incoherent monologue. He just looked at me. His eyes, usually so full of a desperate, pleading hope when he looked at me, were clear. And empty. There was no anger, no disappointment, not even sadness. Just a profound, bone-deep weariness, the look of a soldier who has finally laid down his arms. He slowly raised a hand, the one without the IV port taped to it, and gently interrupted my frantic babbling. "Yvette," he said, his voice raspy but steady, "it's enough, I get it now." He took a slow, rattling breath, the monitor beside him beeping its steady, indifferent rhythm. "It was my mistake. All of it, forcing you into medicine, trying to live my life through you. That was wrong. I see that now." He paused, and his gaze shifted to the window, as if he was looking at something far, far away. "From now on, I won't bother you with these things anymore. Your cousin Michael," he called this morning, "he's a good kid. He said he'll handle my appointments, my prescriptions, all of it. It's better this way." That quiet, calm statement hit me harder than any scream or accusation ever could. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a formal severance. He wasn't yelling because I wasn't worth the energy anymore. He was calmly, procedurally, cutting me out of the part of his life where he was vulnerable. The war was over. But I hadn't won. I had been completely and utterly defeated. This was the final, calm no, not to a request for help, but to me, to the very idea of me as his daughter. A week later, he was discharged. I called, my voice overly bright, offering to pick him up and get him settled. "Don't be silly, Evie," he said, his tone polite but distant. "Michael's already on his way. He's got it all handled." It was another small, clean cut. He did ask if I could swing by his house sometime, though, to grab his spare reading glasses from the nightstand and his old leather-bound address book. It felt like a test, or maybe a tiny, fragile olive branch. I grabbed onto that sliver of hope like a drowning woman. The house was silent when I let myself in with my old key. It was always a quiet house, but this was different. This was the heavy, suffocating silence of absence, the kind that presses in on you. It smelled stale, like the air hadn't moved in days, and a thin layer of dust was already settling on the familiar surfaces. I walked through the living room, my footsteps echoing unnaturally. I found the glasses and the address book right where he said they'd be, next to a half-empty glass of water. I was about to turn and leave, to get out of that suffocating quiet, when I saw them on the kitchen table, laid out perfectly centered on the placemat where I used to sit. 2 tickets. For the community art exhibit. Dated for last Saturday. The stubs were still attached, perfectly intact, their edges crisp and clean. They lay there, side by side, a testament to an afternoon that never happened, a conversation we never had. And next to the tickets was a small, neatly wrapped box. It was the kind of clumsy wrapping he always did, with way too much tape and uneven, folded corners. My name was written on the tag in his familiar, spidery handwriting. My heart started hammering against my ribs. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely get the paper off, tearing it in jagged, pathetic strips. Inside, nestled in a bed of white tissue paper, was a brand new set of professional-grade charcoal sketching pencils. The expensive German kind, the ones in the sleek metal case. The exact same set I'd circled in an art supply catalog with a red marker when I was 17, the one I'd left on the kitchen counter for a week, hoping he'd see it before my birthday. The one he'd eventually pushed aside, saying, "Let's focus on your science grades, sweetheart. That's what matters." I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, the cool, heavy weight of the metal case in my hands. I slid the lid open. The pencils were perfect, untouched, their sharpened points all lined up in a neat gray row. And in that moment, the full, crushing weight of my stupidity hit me. It wasn't a tactic. It wasn't a trap or a new strategy in our Cold War. It was a white flag. He wasn't trying to trick me or manipulate me into a medical conversation. He was trying to find his way back. Not to the doctor he'd tried to create, but to the daughter he'd lost along the way. The girl who loved the smell of graphite and paper more than anything. He wasn't trying to win. God, you have to understand, he was trying to surrender. And I, in my bitter, blind, stupid pride, had shot the messenger. Months have passed. We have a new normal now. It's polite, it's civil. I call him every Sunday and we talk about the weather. I ask if he needs anything from the store. He always says no, that Michael already took care of it. Our conversations are carefully curated minefields of safe topics, each of us stepping gingerly around the crater I left in the middle of our lives. The anger is gone, replaced by this vast, sterile emptiness. Last week at work, I got a promotion. It wasn't a huge deal, just a title change and a small raise, but it was something. My first real professional accomplishment that had nothing to do with him or the path he'd chosen for me. And my first, instinctive thought, the one that shot through me before I could even process the news, was, I have to call Dad. It was a reflex, ingrained in me since I was a little girl learning to ride a bike. Every triumph, every scraped knee, every heartbreak, he was the first call. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over his contact photo, a goofy picture of him in a fishing hat. I was already smiling, imagining the pride in his voice. And then I froze. The smile slid off my face, because I remembered. I remembered the hospital room, the flat look in his eyes, the quiet finality of his words. The man who would have dropped everything to celebrate my small victory, the father who would have bragged to all his friends about his brilliant daughter, he wasn't there anymore. I had traded him for the right to be right. I had meticulously, systematically, pushed him away until he finally agreed to leave. I just stood there in the middle of my office, the phone screen glowing in my hand, and the reality of what I'd lost washed over me. It wasn't just about the missed art show or the unopened gift. It was this exact moment, this gaping, hollow space where his voice should have been. I won. I won every single stupid battle in our stupid, decade-long war. And my prize is this haunting, ever-present absence. It's the ghost at every celebration, the silence at the end of every bad day. I won the war over my past, and in doing so, I completely and utterly lost my future with him.